Welcome to Movie Recap. Today, we be talking about a movie title, Tomorrow's War. The movies start with a biology teacher, Fermergreen Beretton Forrester, who fails to get a job at Thermi Research Laboratory. Meanwhile, soldiers from the year 2051 interrupt the 2022 FIFA World Cup final and announce that in November 2048, aliens called White Spikes appear in Russia and wipe out most life on the Earth within 3 years. Many countries draft and send trained soldiers and civilians into the future through the Jumplink, a time travel device brought by the future soldiers. Dan eventually receives a draft notice, which comes with a surgically attached armband that tracks his location to prevent draft evasion. Dan's wife, Emmy, urges him to ask his father, James, for help removing the armband, but when Dan meets with him, the two get into a heated argument and Dan leaves. Dan is sent to Tomiami Beach in the future, where they face White Spikes after a dangerous parachute drop. Their commander then gives them orders over the radio to rescue nearby lab personnel before military bomb the area. The draftees find all the personnel dead, but recover their research. Dan survives the firebombing with two fellow draftees, a scientist named Charlie and multi-tour veteran of the future war named Dorian. Dan awakens in a forward operating base in Puerto Plata Versine by his daughter, Maury Forrester, now an adult here in the future. She tells him there is a toxin that kills male white spikes, but not the female queens, and asks for his help capturing a female white spike so she can refine the toxin to be fatal to the whole species. She also reveals to Dan that in the past, he became disillusioned after failing to get his research job, which led him to divorce his wife and abandon his family, much like James did to him as a child. He then died in a car crash when Maury was 16. After capturing a female white spike, they head to Deepswell 9, an offshore oil platform with a Jumplink facility. Maury successfully develops a toxin lethal to the Queen, but they can't mass produce it due to the destruction of resources in the future. She sends Dan back to the past with the toxin, hoping to prevent the future war. The base is overrun by a massive swarm of male white spikes in a coordinated effort to protect their queen. Maury is killed in the battle just as Dan is warped back to the past. Contact is subsequently lost with the future, indicating that the Jumplink was destroyed, and the war in the future is lost. Upon his return to the past, Dan delivers the toxin to the military for mass production, then returns home and shares his experiences with Emmy. Together, they discover that the white spikes arrived on Earth earlier than 2048, based on ancient volcanic ash found on a white spike's claw. Dan and Charlie consult with Dan's student, Martin, an amateur volcanologist. They determine that the white spikes have been on Earth, at least since the Millennium eruption. Dan leads a mission to Russia with Charlie, Dorian, the stranded future soldiers, and his father, who carried everyone there in his plane. They find the alien ship frozen in the ice beneath the Academy of Sciences. Glacier surmise that global warming will free them in the future. Additionally, the frozen bodies of a bipedal reptile alien species are also found on board, causing the group to deduce that the ship had crash-landed on Earth by accident and that the white spikes were biological weapons engineered to wipe out the native population of a planet. To allow the reptilian aliens to colonize, the group injects the lethal toxin into several white spikes, hypersleeping in biopods. This kills them almost instantly, but also awakens the rest of the colony, who begin to attack. After awakening, the Queen, White Spike escapes. Dorian and the future soldiers sacrifice themselves to blow up the ship as Dan and his father pursue the Queen. After a fierce battle, Dan kills the Queen with the toxin, ensuring humanity's survival. Knowing that the war is averted, Dan brings his father home to meet Maury for the first time, determined to avoid making the mistakes that the future Maury told him about.